Hey everyone, welcome. I am so excited because today we are talking with Jena Jauchius again. She's back to share with us about nature play outside, you guys, and sensory play. This is so important because we all talk about spaces, and you guys know I'm a big proponent of let's create a culture and environment where we can get and keep love of learning high. And that means your indoor and outdoor spaces. And that's what's really cool because we need to make sure that the association and the area around us, not just, and yes, I talk about way outdoor spaces. I'm sure Jena does too, like parks and all kinds of things. But let's talk about how we can like be intentional, because you guys know I love intentionality. So how could we be intentional about creating those spaces that really support our kids in so many different ways? I'm not going to take any of that away from Jena because she is the expert on this. And I really love her perspective because it's really about crafting and creating and being intentional. And that is something that we put together spaces and we're like, okay, this is our schoolroom. You guys know how I feel about schoolrooms. If you don't, I'm not against them, but I'm also not for them. So you can look up a podcast episode on that. But I know I have one. But you guys, when we're talking about outside environments, especially, we want a little bit of adult space for sure, but we got to have places where the kids can feel like they can play because boys need to dig a hole in the dirt. And Jen and I have talked about this, but it's a thing. Like moms don't talk about it a lot. And when I say it, they're like, "Yeah, what's with the hole?" Like boys need a corner of the space to dig a hole. Like they just need a hole. So and what that does for our kids, I mean, that's like they're so proud, right? They're like, "What I dug? Look at this hole I dug. Oh, my hole." Right? They're like so proud. It's so amazing. But okay, I'm getting off on a tangent, but Jena, thank you so much for joining us again. If you haven't listened or watched the last episode we did last month with her on getting your senses reignited so that you can know how your kids learn, that is really important. And I know that she's going to talk more about this because that's just her jam. But if you haven't watched or listened to that yet, go back and do that because these go together. They go together for sure. So Jena, thanks so much for joining us. I don't want to steal your thunder. I just like the boys in the whole thing is so, I mean,
Oh my
man,
gosh.
it is a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a hole in the ground story I can share about my twin girls. So it is a thing.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I don't hear too
Yeah.
much about the girls in the hole, but I
Oh my
definitely
gosh.
love that. So for sure. Thank you for joining us today. And can you just share with us again, for those of us that have not listened to the last one, just about yourself and why you got into this like nature sensory play kind of world in this landscaping world?
Yeah. Yeah. So for those who don't know me, my name is Jena Jauchius. I am a landscape architect. And for almost 25 years now, I have been designing children's sensory-based, nature-filled play, learning, and therapeutic spaces. So like nature play areas, outdoor classrooms, sensory gardens. I've even designed some indoor nature-based playscapes for early childhood. Um, Early childhood is my jam, but I've designed on up to high school aged kids. So I've got the full like age range down and how kids of different ages and developmental abilities, what their spaces might look like outside and how it best supports them. In addition to design, I also teach parents and homeschooling parents and early childhood folks and educators how to create and tailor their child's space to best suit their uniquely wired nervous system. Because we're sensory based creatures, right? We're sensory creatures. And so what does that look like for each and every child? You know, even if you're a homeschool family and you have more than one kid at home, you can really create an amazing single play space or learning space that offers something for every person in the family. It's really easy to do. So I love
I
my
love
work. I
that.
love being here to share. Thank you so much, Cami.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was just making sure that we're alive here and we are good. But I am so excited about this. You can so Why are the outdoors so important? You talked about you do a little bit of indoors, and that's important too. And we can, I mean, there's so many fun things we can do indoors. But
Yeah.
what the heck? What about outdoors? Like, why is that so cool, and why is that so important to how we learn and how we experience the world? I feel like there's such a great connection there, both energetically and as far as the, our health and the way that we
Oh, yeah.
experience learning. Why is it so important that we go outside?
Yeah, and I could answer that in so many different ways, but I'll mention two big ones. One, like our bodies and our nervous systems, and I talk a lot about the importance of our nervous system. They are designed to communicate with nature. They We haven't evolved to communicate to our indoor spaces, right? These are like we've allowed ourselves to become very domesticated and very indoors. That's not the way that our bodies have evolved. And so they work best and are most happy when they are out communicating with the natural world. That's just how they're designed. It's our senses communicate back and forth with our natural environments more easily. And there's actually been a number of studies done of how the outdoors and being out in nature actually restores our bodies and our nervous system and our health to counteract the damage that's been done by our indoor spaces, regardless, artificial lighting, lack of sunlight, lack of fresh air, views to nature, mold, and other unhealthy things in our daily environments can really affect our nervous system in ways that we're not really conscious of. So being out in nature is completely restorative, no matter who you are and what age you are. The other thing is nature offers the most perfect sensory experiences. Again, that's what we're designed to interact with. But for learning, there's so much more to learn and discover and connect with outside than there could ever be in a man-made setting. No matter how many times you've scrolled on Pinterest and saved these beautiful little images, no matter what you set up inside, it will not compare, I'm sorry to say, to what is available outside, even in the most simple, modest space. So
Totally agreed
go
with that.
outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually standing on a grounding mat right now.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yes.
yeah. So I always do that when I'm working. It's like right under me. But yeah, so we could totally geek out on all that stuff,
Oh,
on all
mhm.
the like biological facets of how, the magnetic energy and things like that work in our body. But for sure, i- just as a general sense, that we're including all of our senses, right? So when you're inside, it's not always including all of our senses. We don't always have the wind blowing. We don't always have, there different sounds, the cacophony of sounds that we have
Right.
in outside that we can't produce inside. And so can you tell me too, I know that's one of the things that you talk about in why that's better for, especially I know you focus a lot on developing these spaces for neurodivergent kids. Why is it so much better for kids who are neurodivergent?
So, one, they don't often, or there's, they often have less ability to get outside into natural places. One, maybe if they're, I know this is homeschool, but for example, if they're in a school setting, it might take more time and
Yeah.
planning it takes time and planning to get every child outside. And so there's so many reasons why they spend less time outside. Um,
Yeah, they need extra help. They need,
yeah,
they have
oftentimes they do.
specialists or things like that that they're coming into. Yeah.
Oftentimes they do. And oftentimes, just the way their wiring works, their nervous system wiring, they don't function well indoors oftentimes. And when, I've heard a lot of teachers and parents say this, when I take my kids outside and my students outside, the child who struggled the most in a learning setting inside is the one that is the leader outside. And so it's like a leveling playing field. Like you level the playing field when all the group of children go outside. And the children who are neurodiverse can connect in ways that they aren't able to, sensory speaking, when they're inside. And it's
I
like, so
love that.
part of them lights up when they are outside compared to when they're inside.
Yeah, and you would almost think that was different because a lot of neurodivergent kids have trouble focusing, and so you think if
Mhm.
there's more sensoriness happening, then perhaps there's, like, overwhelm where it does happen that way for a lot of times, but
Yeah.
it's nature's different.
Oh yeah. Well, again, nature restores us. Here's a story. Just was it last week or the week before from my own life. So my kids go to public school. They're in fourth grade, and I went to a field trip. We went downtown. I live in Spokane, Washington. We watched the orchestra for an hour. Well, the bus ride there and back, it was like they were all over the place, jumping around, flopping all over the seats, not staying seated, whatever. Kids being kids and getting the movement that they need because they've been sitting all day.
Right.
And so um, the next day I went and I got an invitation to visit a local outdoor school that supports the public school setting, but also has a lot of homeschool kids come and utilize their site. So they kind of offer learning opportunities for everyone here in town. And so I was there for an hour and a half. And at the end of the hour and a half, they had this drill, right? They like this bullhorn, like that's when the kids know that all the classes are supposed to come to the shelter. And so all the classes came. There's like 120 kids there, no matter what age. They were all sitting in their seats. They were calm. And it was because they hike during the day. They run the hills after they do a little lesson. They run up and down these hills. They're outside in the fresh air all the time. I was like, they're making eye contact. And the students in this school, there's more neurodiversity than there is in a typical public setting. This was what the teachers were telling me. And so it was really phenomenal for me to see this comparison of this outdoor school. The kids are getting their sensory needs met, and it is absolutely reflected in how they can exist in this learning setting. It was really beautiful.
That is amazing. I can
Yeah,
totally see that happening. Absolutely
I know.
100%. And especially for littles, especially for littles. And
Yeah.
so when you're thinking about creating, say, like, okay, I need to create a more sensory experience. When I'm thinking about doing that, I'm thinking about like a sand table or a water table
Mhm.
or something like that. But that's so how can we get like started? What do we think about if we want to create more of a play sensory
Yeah.
nature-based setting?
Yeah. Resist the urge to scroll on Pinterest for ideas. So that's a waste
Right.
of time.
I say that all the time for indoor stuff too,
Yeah.
schoolrooms.
You're
Don't do
literally
it.
throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like
Yeah.
yeah. So I always turn this around to the parents. Like, so the question back to you is, this is the starting point. Your kids are the starting point. And so the question you need to first answer is, what do my kids love to do? What are their interests? What are activities that they do over and over again? What are activities that they could spend hours doing? And
Dig
so
a hole.
dig a hole. Yes. Yes. My kids too. And so that's a really important question to answer. And that will tell you the activity that you can take outside that will be really enticing to get them outside and maybe off a screen in the process. And then what kind of features are in that? So, for example, if you have a child who loves to play with Legos inside, well, you could create a really awesome loose parts play area where you have natural bits like stones and twigs and branches and little log slices and flowers and seed pods and all these feathers and ribbons and all these things that you can find in your house and outside on your walks or whatever. And you can create a little loose parts play area where they can do a similar building up, breaking down, rebuilding again in a new way. Loose parts are amazing for kids who are imaginative and kids who love like the engineering left brain, like it's a right and left brain activity area. So the follow-up question to that is, do my kids have any sensory needs or sensitivities or differences? And answering that question will help you tailor that space to best support your individual child's unique wiring system, right? Their nervous system and how it communicates with the environment. So in that same example, maybe your child loves the loose parts play, but they have a sound sensitivity, like loud noises or whatever, startle them. And so the location of that probably matters. Locate it in a place where you have good visibility to it, but maybe it's in a quieter spot in your yard. Maybe you go a step further and you create a cozy space around it. Like maybe it's a little fort area that they can tuck inside. Maybe you can put some outdoor pillows in it to, add to the sound dampening qualities of it. So you're really kind of creating this cocoon type space where they can do lots of different play, in addition to loose parts play. So that would be an example of that process, and asking those questions leads you to certain features and how to tailor them.
I love this. And you know what I love about it is that we're starting with the end in mind. We're starting with like the idea of what is my kid like, what is my kid specifically need, right? And
Yeah.
that's something I talk about a lot with the mentoring. Like we think about ourselves and like, okay, how can I help my kid today? Like what can I do
Mhm.
specifically today? And that's really something, a good starting point for any education, for anything that you're doing, parenting in general. Like what is this kid need right now? Right. And
Right.
so I love that, and it made me think of this box we were talking about, the little parts and the little things, the just stuff they can put together. I would like Kenyon's always had this. He's always collected stuff on our walks, on our whatever. He always brings big sticks
Yeah.
home. Like there's this piece of bark looks interesting. Like, ooh, look at this rock. And then he brings it home, and so we have this like crate of just stuff that's just like this his collection, we call it.
Perfect.
His collection of stuff that he's had forever, and now he's like almost 16. He doesn't really look into it, but he's still like, don't get rid of my stuff, man. You know,
Right. He's got a connection. Yeah, absolutely. I get it.
it's his stuff. It's his stuff. It's important. So, that's something where, kids naturally want to do that anyway. Is it's like they find a cool feather and like that's coming home, like
Yeah. Oh, I just yesterday was doing laundry, and I'm pulling the clean laundry out of the washer, and out fall this gravel, and my kids like there's gravel in the washer. But I look at the gravel, and it's really like kind of quartzy. It's like I see why they picked it up and kept it. But so we find that stuff. I find that stuff all the time. I find it like rocks in my purse as we're walking along. They'll stick stuff in my purse. So I mean, apple didn't fall far from the tree. I did that to my own parents. So
you made your bed, right?
I know. I knew this was coming.
I love that. I love that. Well, here's something that I'm thinking of is, so I'm like, of course, I'm thinking of these, like all these things we can do. And yes, all that stuff is free, which I love. Right. And you talk about building a fort or something like that. And I'm like, well, what if because I'm thinking, oh, it'd be awesome if you had a teepee out there and like you had all this cool stuff. But what if we can do this? Like, so what else can we do on a budget that would be helpful for creating
Yeah.
spaces like
Yeah.
this?
So I've already mentioned two of the three that I always like are universal for me. They're universal no matter what age, boy, girl, gender, whatever, neurodiversity, whatever, was loose parts and was a cozy space. And cozy spaces can be anything, it can be anywhere. And I would say they're probably the most important feature that you can include. A cozy space for a teenager might be a hammock, maybe one that kind of closes in on them a little bit. The third one that I love to recommend that also you can do on a budget is edible garden space. And it could be as simple as a pot with some herbs, maybe a cherry tomato. And really the cost involved is the soil, because you can grow things from seed, which has so much, like if you want to talk about a really valuable long-term learning lesson, teach your children how to grow food from seeds, plants from seeds. So you can grow everything from a seed, and really it's the cost of the soil. You can find planter pots for free. If you're like, okay with, the black pots that come from the nurseries, you can get them free on, Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. You can get ceramic pots on those two places for also very inexpensively. So that is a really, really potent space for learning and play and nature connection for everybody. And that whole process there is really beautiful, because if you can teach your children how to do that, then they become the caretakers of that plant. Like, so often they're the ones that get cared for. And in this case, you're putting them in the role of caretaker, where they get to plant the seed, they tend it, they watch it grow, they water it, they get to pick its fruit, and they get to eat it, and they get to share it with others. And that's so, so powerful. And there's so much connection on so many different levels and dimensions that happen when we do that. And often the children will end up teaching you something in the process as well. That always happens. So
Totally. I am a huge proponent of gardening first. So, I mean, just I love gardening, and my son and I go out, and I feel like it's such a great place not only to do sensory learning and to watch that happen, but also it's what I call actually it's a term from Thomas Jefferson education, but it's family work. It's
mm,
family work. So you go and you do it together, and what happens is you have these conversations that are really beautiful. And so you like are talking about the world, or you're talking about your values and your family history. This is like my grandfather was a huge gardener. And so he
mm.
was more of like a set it and forget it kind of gardener. But he was, he was like, he would just be like, let's let the tomatoes go where they want, and he's like
Yeah.
not very, very into the whole, cultivating of that. And he'd be like, I'll fertilize once in the season and I'm done,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And we'll just throw it in there and see what happens. And there's value in all of that stuff too. And the conversations that you have out of that is so beautiful. And that's where you're really creating connections. You're creating a core foundation for who that child is and what they
Yeah.
believe about themselves in the world. But
Yeah.
it's so amazing. And by the way, I don't know if you guys like if this is where you all live, but in our area we have we can go to our like recycling facilities, and they have organic compost in bulk for super cheap.
Nice.
Super cheap. Like I'm talking like $50 for a yard. Like it's
Which
a
is more than
lot.
you could ever use, right?
Like it's so I could use it, but it's so much, It's so
Yeah.
much, but it's really cool just finding cool places like, to get stuff, and it doesn't have to be expensive. And like she said, Jenna said is so correct. Even out of a pot, whatever, get a milk carton, cut it out, grow something,
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be fancy,
Yeah.
we get
And and don't use the excuse that I have a black thumb, I can't keep houseplants alive. I've heard
right.
that so many times,
Me
but
too.
that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is the process. And you can become a green thumb.
It's a
So,
learning curve.
if you're a black thumb, so what? You can learn and teach yourself, and your children can help teach you and be part of the process of becoming someone who's very adept at growing plants. Maybe it's a skill that's latent within you. Here's how you find out.
Exactly. Yeah, no, the first year we had the garden, I didn't get great soil, and the plants were pathetic. Very pathetic. And it's a huge learning curve. It's such a huge learning curve, but it's so fun because you're like, "Oh, the ants are taking over. They brought in all the aphids. What do we do?"
Yep.
Like the whole thing. And then we're
Yeah.
learning together like, "Buddy, guess what I just found out?" So the reason why I did it, like here's some of the things. It's really fun. It's really great. I love that. And I'm thinking about more about a lot of times we want to landscape everything, right, in
Mm-hmm.
our yards. We want everything to have a specific purpose and everything. So can you just talk a little bit about what you feel about having, a lot of us watch HGTV and have like all these moments, in the yard, whatever. And then what do you versus having open spaces or spaces that aren't landscape? What are the benefits of doing either?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, oftentimes when I work with parents, there's one of the two parents that really loves the manicured. They don't want anything messy. They just want it neat and tidy and easy to mow. And I understand that, but they're also missing out on something that's just as important for somebody else, and that's their children. Is that it's really important to have a place where it's okay to be messy. It's okay to get dirty. It's okay to have it unkempt for, however long, so they can play and build and do whatever, dig holes
Dig a hole.
and leave it and then come back to it and continue rather than to have to go back to a starting point. They can continue their play process if their play space is left as they left it.
Because they're creating.
Because it's the creative process, right? And so they can't get past a certain point if you're always requiring them to tidy up. And I understand like picking things up so you're not tripping on things or whatever, but Understand that it is the space that you have, whether it's indoor or outdoor, is valuable for every person in the family. And one thing, I was just talking with someone yesterday about, like, the children, out of everyone in the family, they have the least control over their environment, right? It's the adults who are decorating and doing the layout of the furniture and what's happening, like the patio in the backyard and whatever is happening outside. And kids, and even in their own room, often don't have a say in what their room looks like and the decorations and the colors. And so if you can have a dedicated space that is your child's and they have the primary say, and maybe you can do some guidance and some reining in if you need to.
Some oh heck knows.
So, yeah, and you'll probably have to do that, but hey, at least they have a sense of
I want a
control
spider
over.
garden.
Yeah, yeah. So at least they have some control over something, a
Right.
space that's theirs, and that is really empowering. That's
It
really
is so
empowering.
true. It is so true. In our yard, we actually, when we moved in, we have literally over 1,000 square feet of deck. And
Mm,
it's stupid. It's so big. It's crazy. So there was only like one spot, like where there was nothing, there was, dirt, and that's where the hole got dug, of course. And the hole
yeah.
literally just got filled in, I think maybe a year ago. Like we've been here for 10 years. It's like there's so it was really good. He was always doing stuff in the hole, putting stuff in the hole,
Mhm.
digging more of the hole. And it was just it's a good space for him to just kind of to get out. And I love that the control of one specific area is
Yeah,
really, really cool.
it
Jenna,
is.
I could chat about this with you all day long. It's so awesome. And like I said, we could totally geek out on the health benefits and everything of that.
Yeah.
But it will totally help you guys in your homeschool experience because when kids have a place where, and I know, Jenna, we didn't talk about this time, but I think we did last time, where they can have a break, where they can go do a brain break and like have a place to like flush it, like
Mhm.
flush anything that's negative, flush, just reset
Mhm.
and then come back in. Some parents are really, really good about that. And when they see like, okay, things aren't happening,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
go outside, right?
Sure.
And so having that opportunity to have a little playtime and then of course the fighting to come back in.
Yep, absolutely.
Of course, of course. But this is really, really beneficial to have that space. And you can do that stuff outside. Read outside. Go do your reading
Yeah.
outside. Go do
Take
we've
dinner
done
outside.
make dinner outside. We've done tons of that before where we have a hammock out there and like Kenyon and I've read so many times in the hammock. Like just
Mhm.
can we go read in the hammock? And it's like all the time. It's so fun. But anyways, I would love to have everybody know where they can get in touch with you and get more information.
Yeah. So my website, so my company is N is for Nature Play, and my website is nisfornatureplay.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram and just coming on YouTube now. So yeah, I'm in a couple of places online socials.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know you mentioned yesterday when we were talking, you mentioned you had a summit coming up sometime soon. Was
I
that
do. So I have. It's going to be in January. It's called the Sensory Kids by Nature Summit, where I bring together a bunch of different professionals across a lot of different disciplines that support. And I define sensory kids as all kids because we all have a nervous system. Some kids are just more sensory than others, and so how can we support our sensory kids in playing to their greatest ability, to learn to their greatest potential, and to connect in the ways that are most meaningful for them. And so, yeah, Cami, I hope to have you on that. So yeah,
woohoo? I'm on.
coming
I
up. So
love it.
yeah, if anyone wants to get on my email list, you'll automatically get announcements for that when it's coming out.
I love it. For sure. Do that, you guys. There's so much information in these summits that you do not want to miss. There's so much beautiful, like great nuggets that you can apply right away. It's really what these things are designed for. So I hope you guys got a lot out of today and you got inspired because there's a lot of inspiration to happen in and out of your home for learning. Remember that I always say learning happens everywhere all the time. And so that means outside too, right? So it's a beautiful time when you can have your kids go out and really use their creative, their imaginative, that whole play thing. It's something that's very valuable and a huge skill that is necessary for them to succeed in life in whatever they do. So thank you so much, Jena. And I will see you guys next week. And don't forget to register for the Homeschool Like a Boss workshop, which is actually next Thursday. This time, free Homeschool Like a Boss workshop. It is going to be amazing. We're going to go through all starting homeschooling, maybe just thinking about homeschooling, or you've already been homeschooling and you want to raise that love of learning and keep it there. We're going to teach you how in the Homeschool Like a Boss workshop. Registration is free and it's open in all the spaces that this video or this podcast is at. Okay, you guys, talk to you then. Bye-bye.